Texas A&M training camp starts next week on July 30th, and we have a lot of questions going in.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You are Locked On the Texas A&M Aggies. I am your host, Matt Galatzan, publisher of Texas A&M Aggies on SI. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Joining me today is one of my hardworking staffers over there on Texas A&M Aggies on SI, DJ Burton. DJ, we're almost to football. It's almost there. We're so close. July 30th is the start of training camp officially for Texas A&M, and it's pretty exciting because we have been without football for months and months and months. There's a lot of hype surrounding the Texas A&M Aggies right now. Probably not as much as they deserve, I would say, but there's been a lot of people talking, especially during SEC Media Days. And a lot of lists have come out, a lot of rankings, preseason, all these kinds of things. But with training camp coming up, I think that there's some things that we all need to be looking at to see what this team can do going forward. We saw what they had last season, where they struggled, where they were good. Where are they going to take the steps in 2025? Those are some things we're going to try to examine here today. And I'll start. I think I want to see, and I talked a little bit about this yesterday, but I want to see where Terry Bussey goes and how he fits into this offense. He's such a weapon, and he's so versatile. You can use him in so many different ways, whether it's as a wide receiver, whether it's in the running game, whether it's in the return game, all those different things. But he's certainly a weapon that I think we need to keep our eye on, and someone who needs to step up this season and prove during camp that he's part of this, a regular part of this, this offensive scheme.
Yeah, I agree. I think a big part of what the Aggies need to focus on, at least the big question that they need to answer up front, because I think the offensive line and run game is going to be the heart and soul of this offensive attack. I think it's going to be who's going to be the starter at center. That you had Mark Nabu go down early against Notre Dame, and then you had Faye come in, and it was kind of his offensive line from the point that he came in to the end of the season. And that Aggie rushing attack looked like it could be one of the best in the nation. And you have every guy that played significant time on that line coming back for next season. So I think just having being able to determine who that guy is going to be early on, and then being able to go from there and kind of build around that central squad is going to be crucial for determining how far this team could go.
Yeah, and we saw before Le'Veon Moss got injured last season, he was SEC's leading rusher. He was kind of a dark horse Heisman candidate even at a point. He was really the focal point of what was making them successful offensively and why they started 7-1. So making things easier for him and paving the way up front and having the continuity along that offensive line, I think is going to be crucially important for that running game. And I agree with you. I think that that's going to be their identity. As much as we expect from Marcel Reed to take a step forward in year two, I think that they're still going to rely heavily on running the football and controlling the clock and taking the pressure off of Marcel Reed. So getting the center figured out, not just for the running attack either, but also for helping Marcel Reed call out protections and those kinds of things, I think is going to be crucially important. Let's move to the defensive side of the ball, though. Another big question that I have, I think, is what is this team going to do to stop the run? Last year, it was a major issue for them. They were one of the worst teams in the SEC at stopping the run, and it really cost them down the stretch in their final couple of games, especially against Texas. I think Quintravian Wisner had near 200 yards rushing, or maybe he eclipsed 200 yards rushing. I don't have the stats in front of me, but he was close. He was Texas's offense that day, and it, for all intents and purposes, knocked the Aggies out of the SEC championship game. So with Mike Elko now handling the defense and calling the plays, what is he going to do differently? Who is he going to insert in these different spots? and what changes is he going to make on the defensive side of the football to, really shore up that part of the defense. And I think that that's kind of where it has to start.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of it is also it was weird last year because you have these three big name defensive linemen that, they went to the NFL. They're playing in the NFL, probably going to make an impact on their teams once you know, Stewart gets his stuff figured out with the Bengals. But you have this all-star cast, and then you have Torian York behind him, one of the best linebackers in college football, and you can't stop the run. That was one of the biggest things that baffled me about this team last year. And it almost becomes a part of why is this happening, And whether it be play calling, I think we will figure out if it was the play calling this year once Elko, is in it and calling the defensive plays. But I could see a lot of it kind of remaining the same because you had those star players and now they're gone. But it'll really just depend on who steps up, whether it's coach, the players, none, or both.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Who's going to step up? Who's going to take a step forward? How is Elko going to call this thing differently, scheme this differently, do the run fits differently, all of those different things. So that'll be something interesting to watch going forward. And, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Texas A&M has a lot of returning talent. There's some hype surrounding them. Maybe not enough, in my opinion. That the preseason polls all have them either outside of the top 25 or all the way up to number 12 at some points. Like there's so much of a variance there that it's really a little bit confusing on where we should feel about Texas A&M going into this season. I mean, I think the SEC Media Day preseason polls had them ranked, 8th or 9th or somewhere in there. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was somewhere in the middle of the pack there. So an interesting poll came out. A couple different polls came out from Pro Football Focus, ranking the Aggies' offensive and defensive units. So we're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Aggies. Stick with us after this break. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with your friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop closer to the first pitch, and they're incredible last-minute deals. Clear seat views, and lowest price guarantee that takes all the worry out of buying. Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse an app for an exciting MLB game like the upcoming Astros series this weekend. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, DJ, we're back. And, we talked about some preseason polls where people feel the Aggies rank in the SEC, all these different things. PFF does a great job of evaluating, individual players. They do a good job of compiling these preseason polls and these preseason lists. They recently came out earlier this month, a couple weeks ago, and we're just going to talk about it today. The top 10 offenses and defenses in college football heading into 2025. And I thought these were very interesting because most of the polls I've seen, they have Texas A&M anywhere, like I mentioned before. They could be in the top 15. They could be in the top 20. They could be out of the top 25 completely, depending on who you talk to. It's a bit frustrating because I think both of us have high hopes for Texas A&M right now. But let's start on the offensive side of the ball. We're going to go through the top 10 and where the Aggies sit in there and how we feel about their placement in this, or if they're too high, if they're too low, whatever the case may be. Starting off at number 1, PFF ranks the Clemson Tigers with the best offensive in college football. no surprise, Cade Klubnik, arguably the best quarterback in the country, leading the charge there. They have one of the best offensive lines in football as well. They return 6 offensive linemen who played over 500 snaps last year, which is just crazy. Number 2, Penn State. Obviously, Drew Aller is one of the top quarterbacks in the country as well. They return arguably the best running back tandem in the country with Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. Number 3 is Texas. They have a lot of high hopes for Arch Manning. They have a new offensive line there in Austin, but they're returning a lot of talent at running back as well. And the receivers are super talented there. Then you move on to Alabama at number 4 with another, superstar on the offensive side of the ball with Ryan Williams. They'll be breaking in a new quarterback, but they have high hopes there for Alabama. Florida, led by DJ Lagway, Jake Slaughter on the offensive line, and a top 10 wide receiver with Eugene Wilson the third. They also have some pretty exciting running backs there, so that's one to look at as well. LSU, number 6. I think they should be much higher on this list because I think they're going to have the best offense in the SEC. But, they have a top 5 quarterback with Garrett Nussmeier and a whole bunch of explosive playmakers on the outside there. Then Notre Dame at number 7. Jeremiah Love obviously being the, bell cow there. They'll also be breaking in a new quarterback. And then at number 8 come the Texas A&M Aggies, ranked 1 spot ahead of Ohio State and Oregon, which is a pretty lofty spot on the offensive side of the football. PFF says the Aggies may unleash the best rushing attack in all of college football next year. They have a top 5 running back unit, a top 5 offensive line, and one of the best rushing quarterbacks in Marcel Reed, and a couple wide receivers who are capable rushers as well, with Kevin Concepcion and Terry Bussey. The only question for Texas A&M will have enough if they will have enough passing to complement all that, because Reed ranked 114th in PFF passing grade last year at 64.6. The Aggies do have a top 10 receiver core to help them out. However, DJ, I think this is a pretty good spot. I putting them ahead of schools like Ohio State, who just have a ton of weapons on the offensive side of the ball. Oregon, the same way. They're expected to have an explosive offense. I think they should, potentially even be higher here, maybe above Notre Dame, maybe above Florida, although that's kind of where I see them. I think this is a top 5, top 6 unit, and especially if Marcel Reed can take a step forward in that passing game, like we mentioned.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was kind of surprised to see Notre Dame above them, especially losing Riley Leonard. Felt like he was so much of what that offense was able to do last year. Yeah, they are returning Jeremiah Love, but it really didn't feel like Notre Dame's offense won the game against the Aggies last year. It kind of felt like A&M's defense lost it. So I could definitely see the argument of them being over Notre Dame, and then I could also see them being over Florida too. I completely agree. They could be a top 5, top 6 offense in the league.
Is there anybody else on this list that kind of stuck out to you? Because, for me, I think Clemson's deserving of the number 1 spot. I think that, I think Texas deserves to be up there. I think Penn State deserves to be up there. But then you get into a bunch of question marks surrounding, Alabama. We don't know who their quarterback's going to be. We assume that it's going to be Ty Simpson, but something could change. We don't know how he's going to perform. He has very limited experience. DJ Lagway was good at times last year, but he also saw, some struggles as well. He didn't stay healthy all season, and it seemed like for every big play he had, he also had kind of a head scratcher, following that up not too far after. So he kind of had some freshman moments. I mean, for me it's LSU. I mean, I feel like this team's going to throw 50 times a game, and they've got tons of speed on the outside. They've got a guy who could potentially be the number 1 quarterback in the country, number 1 quarterback in the NFL draft next year, in Garrett Nussmeier. It seems like this is the year that LSU is going to kind of put everything together. And I feel like it kind of starts on the offensive side of the ball. And I don't know how you can rank it a Florida or even an Alabama above LSU just from an offensive standpoint.
Yeah, I completely agree. Alabama's sitting there. They don't, like you said, they have Simpson, who we really haven't seen much from. And when it was Ty Simpson that came in while Milroe was there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Milroe ended up taking the job from him. I mean, Milroe, he's a special guy, but you also have to remember that was Simpson's job. Will we see another guy kind of come in and take it again? And then I agree with LSU. I mean, Nussmeier, he's the real deal. I mean, he threw 3 picks against Texas A&M, but that's if you look at what he's done the rest of the season, that game's an outlier. He's gonna be one of the better quarterbacks in college football, no doubt. And it's just it's really hard to rank Florida and Alabama above them.
Yeah, and I think that, especially if they can figure out how to run the football,
Mm-hmm.
I think that offense could just be something really special and potentially propel them into the playoff, maybe even an SEC championship if they hit all the right strides. It's going to be a big showdown with Texas A&M when they take each other on there. I'll tell you, there's one team that was completely left off of this list that absolutely baffled me because I think they have the second best quarterback in the country. I think they have arguably, outside of LSU, the most potentially explosive offense in the SEC. They have a absolute freak at wide receiver. Like, I mean, this guy's 6'6" and 230 pounds and runs like a gazelle. South Carolina. How do you leave Lenore Sellers and Nick Harbor and all these weapons that they have offensively off of this list? I mean, we saw what they did to Texas A&M last year. They put up 44 points, 24 in the second half. Texas A&M's defense left a lot to be desired last year, but they had no answer for Lenore Sellers that offense at all.
Yeah, now that you mention it, like looking at the list, I was like, okay, this everything feels pretty right on here, but I could definitely see them sliding into like an 11 spot, maybe even overtaking, Oregon and Ohio State there in the 9 and 10 spot. But I mean, Lenore Sellers, just special player. It's just hard to leave him off this list, period.
Yeah, especially when you consider Oregon and Ohio State are both breaking in new starting quarterbacks. Julian Sand has thrown, I think, 12 passes in his college career so far. And he's his first game of the season is going to be against Texas, which might have the best defense in college football heading into next year. And then he's got the Big Ten schedule, which, according to Big Ten media days, the Big Ten's the hardest thing that's ever existed in the history of football. So, and then over at Oregon, you got Dante Moore, who, was the number one quarterback in the country coming out of high school. But again, he's a first-time starter. So, I mean, you're leaving Lenore Sellers off of this list completely when he set college football on fire last year. And a lot of people think he's the best quarterback in college football. And some of the best quarterback minds that I know who scout the position as well as anybody else in media think that this guy is head and shoulders above the next guy in line. And I just find it hard to believe that they're not going to have a top 10 offense next year. They're just an elite football team, and I think that they're going to challenge for a playoff spot. But we also have to talk about defense, DJ. And PFF also released their top 10 defenses ahead of the football season next year. So after this break up next, we're going to talk about the defense, where the Aggies sit, and probably have a little bit lengthier of a discussion about whether or not the Aggies should be on this list at all, where they rank, and all those different kinds of things. So stick with us after this break. All right, DJ, we just talked offense. PFF released their top 10 offenses ahead of the 2025 college football season. Now we are on to the defense. They released that list as well. So let's go through this list real quick, just like we did in the last one. We'll talk about where A&M sits, if there's anybody we think they should be higher or lower than, and, if there's anybody that they left off, because we were both shocked that they left South Carolina off, but of the offensive list. But let's start at the top. They have the Alabama Crimson Tide coming in at number 1. Alabama ranked second in PFF's defensive line and secondary rankings heading into this season. They also placed 8th at the linebacker unit rankings, and they have a lot of elite talent on that side of the ball. Texas, who would probably be my pick for the number one defense next season, just returns a boatload of talent. All-American and Michael Taft, arguably the best linebacker in college football in Anthony Hill, arguably the best edge rusher in college football in Colin Simmons, a bunch of other elite players as well on that side of the ball. And their defensive coordinator, Pete Kwiatkowski, is one of the best in the nation. Clemson at number 3. He comes in, or Clemson comes in with, potentially 6 first-round NFL draft picks next season. A lot of those are on the defensive side of the football and on the defensive line. They come in at number 3. The Georgia Bulldogs, always a good defensive team. They come in at number 4. Penn State at number 5. Even though they're going to have to replace Abdul Carter, there's still a ton of talent on that side of the ball. They have Notre Dame at number 6, Oregon at number 7, Ohio State with arguably the best player in the country, regardless of position, and Caleb Downs at number 8. And then coming in at number 9, we have the Texas A&M Aggies. Here's what they say about Texas A&M. The Aggies have PFF's 6th-ranked linebacker unit led by the number 2 linebacker in college football in Torian York. The defensive line is a top 15 group with potential breakout stars and edge rusher Cassius Howell and defensive tackle Tyler Oniendem. The secondary needs to play better. The Texas A&M does return plenty of experienced players to the unit. DJ, what do you think about the Aggies being ranked in the top 10? I mean, because to me, it kind of feels like, based on what we saw last season, I get all the returning talent, and I'm hopeful on that side of the ball. I really am, especially with the additions they made in the transfer portal. But for me, the Texas A&M defense is kind of a wait and see to see how good they can be, particularly in the secondary. There were so many times last season where this defense, the offense put them in position to win games, and the defense just couldn't close the deal. We saw it against Auburn. We saw it against a couple other teams as well. USC is one that sticks out as well in the Las Vegas Bowl. So, for me, it really is a wait and see approach with the defense.
Yeah, the Texas A&M's defense really reminds me a lot of like the Dallas Cowboys. Like you look at the team's roster, you look at them on paper, and you're like, there's no way this team isn't, one of the top teams in the league. And it was the same thing with A&M's defense last year. And A&M's defense also looks like it should be one of those top teams in, the SEC this year, and even the nation. But it's just one of those things where you have to watch them, because while they look like they should be good, they're not always good. It's just hard to put them in the top 10 for me, because last year they struggled against the run all season, and then towards the end of the year they started struggling with the pass. And you can't struggle with both and be in the top 10. You shouldn't even be struggling with one and be in the top 10. So it's just a little surprising to me to find them there.
Yeah, and if you just look at the losses they've had there to start with, Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart, Nick Scorton, 3 of the best defensive linemen in the SEC, all gone. Cassius Howell might have been their best pass rusher last year. He's returning. You're also getting Albert Regis back. You get TJ Searcy in the transfer portal. Up front, Scooby Williams is coming back at linebacker. We know what we have in Torian York there at linebacker. I think something that was very underrated about this defense last year, in terms of it flew under the radar for why this team was struggling, was Tyreek Chappell went out in week 2 and was lost for the season. And he was kind of a do-it-all guy for them. He was going to be sort of their star or nickel, whatever you want to call that position. He was going to be the guy there. And that's a critical position in Mike Elko's defense. And then you also add Julian Humphrey in the transfer portal, who had a great start to last season with Georgia before he struggled towards the end. But he comes in and gives you another super athletic guy in the secondary. You already have Des Ricks. You already have Will Lee. You already have Bryce Anderson at safety. So there's a lot of talent in the secondary. I think if they can just put it all together back there, and Mike Elko can figure out the little tweaks that he needs to make in the run game defensively, I think this can be a special unit. I really do. I just feel like the onus is kind of on Mike Elko to figure out why this defense is struggling so much. It's going to be an interesting thing to see. I don't know how Elko is going to fix these things. I just don't know. But I think that he has proven over his time as a defensive coordinator at Notre Dame and Texas A&M, and as the head coach at Duke, he did show that he has the ability to fix a defense that is not performing at a high level. So I think that he's going to be able to do that this year. I just need to see how they do it early on in the season.
Yeah, I agree with you. He has shown that he's able to fix whatever's going on. Even with the run game last year, A&M struggled early on, and while they didn't become great at stopping the run, you saw the gradual improvement all season long in the run game. So I completely agree. I have complete faith that Elko will be able to fix it.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. We get camp starting July 30th, which is just a week away, and that's pretty exciting, I think, for every football fan out there, because it has been a long summer and we are tired of no football. So just to get anything back, whether it's watching practice or whatever the case may be, I think that that's just an exciting time for everybody. Welcome back, college football. It's almost here. But thank you so much for making Locked On Aggies your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal Show on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, give me a follow over on Texas A&M Aggies on SI and on X at Matt Galatzan. Follow DJ over on X at DJ Burt, and we will see you next time.